An army, besides the generalized meanings of a country's armed forces or its land forces, is a type of formation in militaries of various countries, including the Soviet Union. This article serves as a central point of reference for Soviet armies without individual articles, and explains some of the differences between Soviet armies and the U.S. and British counterparts. During the Russian Civil War, most Soviet armies consisted of independent rifle and cavalry divisions, and corps were rare. During World War II, Soviet armies included the all-arms tank, air, and air defense armies, which included a number of corps, divisions, brigades, regiments and battalions belonging largely to the appropriate branch of the armed forces or of the arm of service, such as the Rifle Corps. In the emergency of June 1941, it was found that inexperienced commanders had difficulty controlling armies with more than 2 or 3 subordinate corps, and several armies were disbanded, to be reformed later in the war. Thus, Soviet High Command's Circular 01 of July 15, 1941, directed several changes to Red Army force structure, including the elimination of Rifle Corps headquarters and subordination of rifle divisions directly to Rifle Army headquarters. Following the Second World War, an army was reorganized with 4 or 5 divisions, often equivalent to a corps in the militaries of other countries. During a war, an army of the Soviet military was typically subordinated to a front. In peacetime, an army was usually subordinated to a military district. History. There were large variations in structure and size. For example, in the October 1944 Battle of Debrecen, the 27th Army was a massive organization with 9 rifle divisions, an artillery division, and 4 attached Romanian infantry divisions. The 40th Army, by comparison, had only 5 rifle divisions. Both armies were part of the Second Ukrainian Front. Special titles given to Soviet armies included Red Banner Army, following the award of the Order of the Red Banner, and Shock Army. The famous image of the flag over the Reichstag was of men from the 3rd Shock Army's 150th Rifle Division, in accordance with pre-war planning that saw Shock Armies as special penetration formations. The 1st Shock Army was formed in November to December 1941 to spearhead the December counteroffensive north of Moscow. A total of 5 shock armies were formed by the winter campaigns of 1942–43, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. During the Stalingrad counteroffensive, the 5th Shock Army was the last such formation formed. The 2nd Shock Army was reformed 3 times, most famously after being encircled in the Lie-Orban operation south of Leningrad, after which its commander, General Andrei Vlasiv, went over to the German side. Armies which distinguished themselves in combat during the Great Patriotic War of 1941–45 often became Guards armies. These included the 8th Guards Army. As World War II went on, the complement of supporting units attached to a Soviet army became larger and more complex. By 1945, a Soviet army typically had attached mortar, anti-tank, anti-aircraft, howitzer, gun howitzer, rocket launcher, independent tank, self-propelled gun, armored train, flamethrower, and engineer sapper units. In particular, the ratio of artillery pieces to riflemen increased as the war went on, reflecting the Soviet need for increased firepower as manpower reserves began to decline after staggering infantry losses. For the Soviet Air Force, air armies were attached to fronts. They were made up of 2 to 3 aviation corps. The 16th Air Army is one of the longest-serving, still active today in the Moscow Military District. List of Soviet armies in the Civil War. Regular armies, cavalry armies. List of Soviet armies from 1930. Combined Arms Armies. There were 79 Combined Arms Army headquarters created during the Second World War, with 16 permanently disbanded during the war, and over 20 converted to other army, front or military district headquarters. After World War II, Soviet armies were known as Combined Arms Armies, sometimes translated during the early Cold War as All Arms Armies. Guards Armies, Shock Armies, Tank and Mechanized Armies, normally made up of 2 or 3 tank and mechanized corps. Guards Tank Armies were made up of a number of Guards Tank and Mechanized Corps. Reserve Armies. The Stavka formed 10 reserve armies in mid-1942 to bolster the reserve of the Supreme High Command. People's Militia Army. The Leningrad People's Opolchenia Army was born mostly from the 168 battalions of fighters previously raised to deal with expected saboteurs and parachutists. It reported directly to the commander of the Northern Front. The initial intention was to create an army with 7 divisions. Operational groups. The Novgorod Army Operational Group was first established on 13 August 1939 by the Order No. 0129 of the Chairman of the People's Commissariat for Defense, Marshal of the Soviet Union K. Voroshilov. The group was created for operations in Estonia and Latvia. It became the 8th Army in October 1939. It had the task of providing security of the northwestern borders of the USSR. Was re-established on July 31, 1941. Troops from the east and the management of the defense sector Luga Operational Group. It was part of the Operational Army from the 31st of July 1941 to the 6th of August 1941, when it was redesignated as the 48th Army. Reformed as an operational group of the Volkow Front under the command of Major General Korovnikov, formed on August 16, 1941, bringing together units to the east of Novgorod, including remnants of the 28th Tank Division. Active the 16th of August 1941 to the 15th of May 1942. Tsiru, Luga Operational Group, Neva Operational Group. Other operational groups. Bibliography. Kursk Order of Battle. John Ericsson, The Road to Stalingrad, Weidenfeld and Amp. Nicholson, London, 1975. Theskov et al. The Soviet Army during the years of the Cold War 1945–91. Tomsk 2004. Theskov V.I. Gulikov V.I. Kalashnikov K.A. Slugin S.A. Tomsk, Scientific and Technical Literature Publishing. ISBN 9785895035306. David Lantz, Colossus Reborn, The Red Army at War 1941–43, University Press of Kansas, Lawrence, 2005. David Lantz, When Titans Clashed, University Press of Kansas, Lawrence, 1995. Krivosheyev, F. Soviet Casualties and Combat Losses in the 20th Century, Greenhill Books, London, 1997. Abayona Press, Slaughterhouse, The Handbook of the Eastern Front, Bedford, PA, 2005. http, samsv, narrad, ru HTML.